Each year in the United States, thousands of major crimes go unsolved. When the case has gone cold and police have nowhere to turn, they seek assistance from the public. This is a program dedicated to solving these cases. This is Crime Stoppers Case Files.
Every year, crimes go unsolved here in Southern California. Loved ones are left waiting. I'm Joy Benedict, and as a news reporter, I've covered countless crimes, countless homicides, and I know that sometimes the victims of these crimes are forgotten almost as quickly as the headlines fade. So tonight on Crime Stoppers Case Files, we take another look at some of the crimes still lingering unsolved in our communities. Let's get started. It's December 9th, 2009. That's when someone broke into the home of Sheridan Spencer. The 70-year-old musician was shot by those intruders, but he didn't die immediately. He had enough strength to try and get help, but unfortunately, no one heard him. And here is his story.
Sheridan Spencer was my brother, and we all called him Rech. He was my brother. Somebody that I loved, and somebody that loved me. And he was really a good person, Me and his relationship was like that, If I needed anything, I can call upon him and I can get it. All I know is that he loved music. I know he could sing, but he was always interested in music. When I was a young kid, I remember when my other brother runs in the house and said, Rip got a record, Rip got a song, And I was sitting on the floor, and I remember as a kid just like, what's going on, And I remember he put the record on the record player. And I remember them, like, how you do like this when you listen to music? I remember that, So yes, he did start at a young age. Always had something going on with music.
Mr. Spencer, the victim of the homicide, was well known in the community and was a famous personage, having played a role in the group Marvin and Johnny, an oldies group that to this day has been called out to numerous car show functions and many functions in the city of Compton. He was well known as a singer in that group and was famous for a song, Cherry Pie. He was well known and respected in the community. On December 9th, 2009, we were called to an address in Compton at West Caldwell Street in the city of Compton. At that location, we found the victim, Sheridan Spencer, murdered and laying on the front porch of his home. We believe that the murder occurred shortly after 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the evening before the discovery. We believe that Spencer was in his back patio area, possibly enjoying a beer or a drink, and that at some point during this evening, shortly after 8, the suspects walked through the walkway, which is located to the west of the house, into the back patio area. We believe that there a confrontation occurred, and we believe this by the evidence we found in the patio. And we know this to be the case because many neighbors recalled hearing multiple gunshots at that time. At some point, Mr. Spencer was brought into the house by way of the back door, first entering through the kitchen, and we know this because of the trail of blood that led from the patio into the kitchen and into the living room. In the living room, we also believe that Spencer was detained, very likely at gunpoint. We know he was very likely shot also in the living room because of blood and casings found. We believe that somebody detained him and that very likely this involved several suspects. That while Spencer was being detained in the living room, the other suspects were ransacking the house.
We'll be right back with more on the crime that killed Sheridan Spencer.
On December 9th, 2009, Sheridan Spencer was murdered in his home. We believe that the murder occurred probably on the 8th. From speaking to witnesses who heard the gunshots, Mr. Spencer was brought into the house by way of the back door, first entering through the kitchen, and then eventually into the living room, where additional evidence was found that we believe demonstrates that Spencer was detained in the living room for some time. We know that Spencer lived by himself. His mother had died, and we know from some of the neighbors that the death of his mother he took that to heart, and it affected him greatly. We know that from the neighbors that Spencer became a very quiet man and very distant from interacting with some of the neighbors. The death of his mother appeared to be a very traumatic experience to him. The two of them lived together in that house. The primary focus of the suspects, without a doubt, was to rob the victim of his possessions. Every one of the rooms were ransacked. Every drawer was pulled out and turned over. And judging by the amount of ransacking, we know that this was a process that took quite a while, because there was not a portion of any one of the bedrooms that was not ransacked or evidence of there being a search. The suspects were looking for money, jewelry, things of value, and at some point they eventually loaded up the victim's van, which was in the driveway, and left his house. The injuries to Spencer were because of the number of times he was shot. There was a substantial amount of blood in the patio area, the rear patio area of the house. The trail of blood from the patio into the kitchen and into the living room was also substantial. There was a large amount of blood in the living room and on the sofa. For reasons that we don't understand, Spencer was able to walk out to the front porch area of his house. Why he didn't call for help, why he didn't scream out or use the phone in the house, we don't know. Spencer walked out to his front porch area, sat down on a chair in the patio, and then eventually fell to his side, falling on his back, where he was found at about 1:30 the following day. There's no question that Spencer died from the great loss of blood that he sustained from his injuries. We believe that there was more than one suspect involved. The victim's vehicle was located in the city of Riverside, across from the Riverside Metrolink train station, and it was intentionally set on fire. We're looking for two males that have been described to us, possibly Hispanics or lighter complected male blacks. We're also looking for a vehicle of interest, a possible green Toyota compact, 80s to 90s year model, and those are the primary people of interest we're looking for. We're asking the public's help, their assistance in helping us solve this homicide. Any information would be appreciated that would help us. What we need is information to solve the case, and any assistance would greatly be appreciated.
I miss him. I miss him, and it's like, who did that to him? You know, for what? What did you do that to him for? Because that man, he would help anybody. He would. He'll help you. And he took somebody away from me that I loved. You know, I loved that. I loved him. That was my friend. That was my family. That was somebody I can call on, and that would be there for me. And if the situation was turned around, he'd be sitting right here for me.
Sheridan Spencer was just trying to live his retirement years in peace. He didn't deserve to be murdered in his own home. Remember, this happened on December 9th, 2009 on West Caldwell Street in Compton. If you heard anything that night, if you've heard anything since, please call Crime Stoppers. Your information could lead to a cash reward.
I'm Los Angeles County Sheriff Lee Baca. The Los Angeles Sheriff's Department has partnered with the LAPD and other municipal police departments throughout our county to form the Los Angeles Regional Crime Stoppers organization. Crime Stoppers is an important law enforcement tool, a proactive approach to removing dangerous criminals from our streets. Each week on this television program, we will share the facts about unsolved cases, and you will have the opportunity to submit information that may help investigators without ever having to give your name. I encourage you to provide us any information you may have. I thank you for joining us. and doing your part to make our community safer.
Here's a case Los Angeles detectives are trying to find more information on. A man was apparently robbed while unloading groceries outside his home in East LA. It happened in the 6000 block of Holm Avenue at around 7:30 in the evening on March 30th, 2012.
On March 30th, 2012 at approximately 7:30 p.m., my victim returned to his home along the 6000 block of Holm Avenue in the Lower Ladera area of Los Angeles. This area is primarily a residential area. The suspects, which are described as two male Hispanics, walked up to the victim from behind, pointing handguns at his head. The suspects emptied out the victim's pockets and took $1,500 from him as he was loading groceries from his car to his house. In talking to the victim, he believes that the suspects were gang members from a very violent Hispanic gang. During this incident, the victim believes that the suspects were looking for another person. When the suspects determined that the victim was not the person they were looking for, they let him go. The victim did tell me that he was in fear for his safety and thought that had they not determined that he wasn't the person they were looking for, they were going to kill him. We have one sketch of one of the suspects that the victim was able to identify. Both suspects were male Hispanic, 35 to 40 years old, approximately 5'5" to 5'6", weighing approximately 150 to 200 pounds. The suspects in this incident are believed to be from a violent Hispanic gang, not normally from our area. It appears that they came from possibly the downtown LA or Southwest Division area.
Again, police are just looking for more information at this time, but we do know there were two suspects in this case. Both are described as Hispanic men around 35 to 40, 5'5" to 5'6". They ran off with about $1,500. So if you know anything about this case, you are urged to call Crime Stoppers. I want to introduce you to Leslie Long. She was a young wife and mother of 3 small children. Leslie was working the night shift at a Palmdale gas station on December 3rd, 1978. Yes, this case is 33 years in the making, and the investigation is just as prevalent today because what happened that night left her 3 children without a mother, and they still deserve justice.
On December 3rd, 1978, between 9:30 and 10 o'clock p.m., Leslie Long was working a small gas station on the corner of Division and Palmdale Boulevard in the city of Palmdale. Leslie was a 20-year-old mother of 3. She actually worked at the gas station with her sister, Marva. The gas station was a small Chevron gas station.
It was a full-service gas station. We washed windows, checked tires, changed oil, basic mechanics. She was needing a job, so I talked to my manager and got her hired.
Marva had the shift earlier, and Leslie relieved Marva. And after Marva went home, that's when Leslie went missing.
I think the part that stuck with me most is that she had asked me if I wanted to trade shifts with her that day because, you know, she wanted to get home to her kids. I didn't have any kids, and so I was, no, I don't want to trade shifts with you. I want to go home. So I left her there, and that was the last time I saw her.
A gentleman came in to pump gas. Once he finished, he went to go pay for the gas. I walked into the gas station office, found the lights on, the doors open, but the gas station attendant was nowhere to be found. He did observe that the floor safe had been lifted and the contents had been removed and change was scattered all over the floor. He did see a purse inside the office, and he suspected that something was wrong, so he called the Antelope Valley Sheriff's Station, and the deputies came to investigate. This is our theory based on the evidence of what happened. We believe there were 2 suspects involved in this murder at least. We do have 2 donors of DNA at the crime scene that are distinct and separate. The suspects came in and robbed Leslie at gunpoint. They could see that there was a floor safe. Leslie had the key to that, and they forced her to open the safe at gunpoint. Once the safe was open, there was a lower safe in the floor, and they forced her to open that safe, and that's where the large cash was. That normally would not have been open until the manager came in the morning. The safe was emptied of all cash. Change was strewn all over the floor, and then Leslie was forcibly taken at gunpoint into the suspect's vehicle. Somewhere in that time frame, she was also raped, whether it was inside the car or out at the crime scene, we're not really sure. But she was raped. And the drive from the Palmdale gas station where she was killed is a remote area of the desert. At that time of night, in 1978, there were no residences, there were no lights, and where she was taken was a dark, isolated hill in the middle of the desert of the town of Acton. And then she was forced to kneel on the ground, and she was shot in the back of the head 5 times.
From there, I just remember the days progressing that, we all were wondering about what happened and where she was, and trying not to worry too much for the kids' sake, to keep them calm, I guess.
I just remember staying there at the house in Palmdale with Jim, with her husband, days after days, just being there to help him with the kids. And he would just sit and just kind of be in deep thought, He seemed scared and upset, that why would someone do this to my wife, to the mother of my children? Why would anybody take her away?
There was a massive search for Leslie, and it took 3 days before her body was found, 6 miles south of the gas station on a small hill just south of the freeway in the town of Acton.
The suspects executed Leslie Long, shooting her 5 times in the head. And in a horrible twist of fate, 1 year later, Leslie's husband Jim was killed in a motorcycle accident, leaving their 3 children without both their parents.
In 1978-79, the Antelope Valley Press covered this story extensively. And many people in the Antelope Valley probably are under the impression that this was solved already, because back then we had 2 prison escapees that escaped out of Northern California. They were believed to have been involved in this murder of Leslie Long. They escaped about 3 days before the murder occurred, and one of the escapees was actually doing life in prison for an identical crime where a gas station attendant was kidnapped, robbed, and killed at a remote area on a Sunday night. Because of the similarities, detectives obviously looked into these 2 escapees. Once they were recaptured, they were interviewed and made some statements that could have been implicating them in the murder. Recently with DNA, we tested the DNA that we have from the crime scene to these 2 escapees, and they both have been eliminated from the DNA donors of the crime. So they are no longer suspects in this case, and this case remains unsolved.
It was a Sunday night, December 3rd, 1978, in Palmdale, at the Chevron gas station on Palmdale Boulevard in Division. Please help us. We would like to bring this to a closure for the children, and would like to be able to let my grandmother know, who is 100 years old, that there's finally closure, that there finally is someone that will be held accountable for the murder of my sister, Leslie Combs Long.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Crime Stoppers Case Files. Remember, we are here every week with more crimes and more families needing answers. These are your neighbors. This is your community, and you can make a difference.